Okay, you want me to count? Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Welcome to the El Monte Union High School District Community Forum. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are appreciative of your time and hope that you find this information helpful as we prepare for the reopening of schools this fall. Gracias por acompañarnos esta tarde. Apreciamos su tiempo y esperamos que encuentre esta información mientras nos preparamos para abrir nuestras escuelas en este año nuevo escolar 2020-21. For anyone who is in need of translation services, our program, which is being featured on YouTube, allows for closed captioning in several languages. Please refer to the slide for more assistance. Para cualquier persona que necesita servicios de traducción, nuestro programa que está presente en YouTube permite subtítulos en varios idiomas. Entonces, si necesita ayuda en lo que está mirando ahorita, le puede ayudar a encontrar dónde poner el botón para saber el título que usted quiera, español. And for those of you guys who need translation also in different languages, this is not only Spanish, but also for other languages that you are familiar with and also would like to have that translated in a different format. Okay, so we welcome you to take the time now, if you need to go ahead and do that on your YouTube screen. Keep in mind that you're looking for the CC for the closed caption, as well as the little, looks like a little wheel that allows for you to have options for your language translation. Hopefully that is helpful for you. Before we begin, I'd like to also thank our Board of Trustees for their support and for the leadership during this unprecedented time. Our Board of Trustees consists of Board President, Mr. Florencio Briones, Vice President, Ms. Maria Morgan, our Clerk, Mr. Carlos Salcedo, our Member, Mr. David Diaz, and our Member, Mr. Ricardo Padillas. Without their support, it's almost impossible to accomplish what we need to do for the reopening of school this fall. So thank you, Board of Trustees, for your ongoing leadership support as we get through this summer and into the fall. I also would like to introduce members this evening who are joining us for as part of our forum, and they will be providing me with assistance on an overview of our reopening of schools for this fall. I'd like to first start off with our Chief Business Official, Mr. Wael Elatar, our Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services, Mr. Larry Ciso, our current El Monte High School Principal, who will also be transitioning into her new assignment as Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mrs. Robin Torres. We have Mr. Eric Steelman, our Chief Technology and Innovation Officer. We have Ms. Hillary Wolf, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. We have Mr. Alejandro Leon, Director of Student Services. Ms. Norma Macias, Director of Facilities, Maintenance and Operations, also Transportation. Mr. Roy Monte, our Director of Risk Management and Safety. Mr. Cesar Castellanos, our Assistant Principal for Student Affairs at South El Monte High School. And Mr. Oscar Gomez, our Assistant Principal of Student Services at Mountain View High School. So these individuals are also partaking in our task force, and they will play a key role in some of the information that's going to be provided for you this afternoon. Our presentation is the format for us will allow an opportunity for us to first give you an overview of things that we've been working on at the school district this summer. And even before then, we started working as we ended the spring, all of you who are familiar with what we did in the spring, when we went into distance learning on March 13th, we quickly went into that phase with knowing that there would be several challenges for our students and also our staff, but also with the understanding that the safety of our students and our staff was at the time our priority and continues to be a priority. And towards the end of the school year, we started focusing on not only summer school, but also how we would now face the challenges in the fall as we reopening the school year. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the areas that we focused on. And then after that, we will end it with some of the Q&A questions that you may be thinking about now or have questions already in mind that you would like to for us to consider or respond to or answer. And As I move down the presentation slide, you'll have the opportunity to look at this link here, and you'll see a survey, a form where you could actually place your name, which area you're covering, whether you're a student or a parent, who you're representing as far as the stakeholder group here this evening. So we'll do our best to compile these questions. They may be very similar to questions, so we're going to try to do our best as we're going through this presentation, collecting your questions, and at the end, provide some responses. I commit to you that if we are not able to answer all the questions during this time, that we will certainly do that and provide a response on our website within the next day or two to make sure that we thoroughly look at your questions and have a response. But I'm certain and I'm hopeful that we can get that done before the end of the evening tonight. Okay, so thank you again for joining us. Please, again, think about what you'd like to ask if you have any question at this time, or if you just want to join us and listen in as we go through this process here. So I'm excited, number one, that we have the opportunity to do this in a virtual format. This is the first time we've ever done a virtual format setting as far as a forum itself. I know that a lot of you are joining us from home. Hopefully that you are home with your families. I know some of you may be away, whether you're with family or at work, even trying to get some information for your family, your student, or also our staff members who continue to monitor what we're working on to ensure that their safety is also covered when we come back to the fall. The Reopening of School Task Force, which is a task force of over 50 members, is comprised of several school representatives, including district administrators, school administrators, principals. We also have our union partners association with our Teachers Association and our Classified Employee Association members as well that have been designated to be part of this task force. We have a wonderful group of classified employees and also educators, our teachers and other who play other roles as well that are representing their schools. And we also value the importance of our students and parents on the committee as well. So we have asked some parents and students to be part of this task force to show some of the ideas or express some of the ideas and also be part of the solution here, because it's not going to be an easy task when we provide our final plans. And I just want to be upfront that right now, given the circumstances and given the changing conditions that we have during this pandemic, we are seeing that almost every week we either receive updates, we have changes to these updates. The Department of Public Health has played a critical role in some of the decision making, which has guided us, but also with the understanding that things may change either a week from now, a month from now. It's been very difficult, but at the same time, we're taking this challenge and we're excited of the opportunity to serve you as a community. Under this task force, you're going to see 5 areas that we're going to discuss today. One of them includes instruction. The other one includes safety and health. The other one includes social emotional support systems. One other one is family and community engagement, and then operations. So if you look at the key symbols, that would make reference to the slides that we're discussing. Hopefully you get a glimpse on what we're seeing here, because over the next couple of slides, we're going to talk just a brief overview of the responsibilities of each of these task forces have played. And moving on to the next slide, we will begin with one of the first task force. I'm sorry, before we do that, let's talk about some of the deciding factors, why we are working on this and how the final plan will be dependent on some of these factors. Number one, it's important that you understand that the state and the county provide us guidelines. And the state has a blanket for all the guidelines provided to schools, for example. They have the 2 sectors, the California Department of Education and also the Department of Public Health, which also focuses on school safety and reopening of schools. Those guidelines have been provided as templates for us, and these are recommendations coming down from both the Department of Public Health and also the California Department of Education. Second, the county has also 2 sectors that we're working with. First, the County Office of Education. They have helped us tremendously in providing a template and a guide for our planning. And second, and probably the most important component of tonight's event, is Department of Public Health, which is LA County Department of Public Health. They will set the guidelines and parameters for all schools in LA County once we reopen in the fall. They will be the deciding factor on some of the recommendations we make for the instructional model that we're going to plan out and thoroughly make a decision on over the next couple, hopefully, days and weeks that we're working with our team here and our stakeholder groups. So we rely heavily on them. They're expected to release their final guidelines for reopening of schools sometime this week. And as soon as we get a hold of those, definitely will help us finalize our plan for the fall reopening of schools. Alongside that, we also want to make sure that we engage our local community partners. That includes all of you here. That includes a task force that represents all of you. When we do meet once a week, we meet about 2 hours every Wednesday. And also some of these subcommittees meet away from the actual scheduled date because the work continues and there's enough work that we can go on for another full year, but unfortunately our time is critical about when we make these decisions. So thank you again for all of you, students, families, and staff for engaging and being part of our conversation related to the reopening of schools. Provide options and plan for several scenarios due to the continuously changing environment of the COVID-19 pandemic. That is something that we feel is relevant to our conversation today because what we tell you today, I guarantee in about a couple of weeks, we're going to either hear an update, new information, or will allow us to modify what we already have in place. So once we complete the plan, as we did with the school closures in the spring, we will definitely have to do updates, whether it's version 1, version 2, and ongoing. So I ask that you take that into consideration, that you know that we are relying heavily on our partners throughout our community, our county, and also state representatives on there. And obviously, having mentioned the last bullet, the current economic conditions. As you know that we enter a new fiscal year July 1st, the economic conditions that have impacted, the pandemic has impacted the economy will play a significant role over the next school year and beyond. So though this is not a direct factor of reopening of schools, it does allow for the district to evaluate when and where and how we operate as a school district. This includes meals provided for students. This includes after-school programs. This includes any type of support for students virtually or at home, including resources, materials, technology, just about anything relies on our school budget. So please keep those deciding factors in mind as we speak about the reopening of school. If we go on to the next slide, please. I'd like to introduce our committee member who is overseeing the operations part of our subcommittees. This is one of the 5, as I mentioned to you earlier. Mrs. Norma Macias, our Director of Facilities, Maintenance, Operations, Transportation, is here to provide you just an overview of what responsibilities she is overseeing as the facilitator, but also what are some of the key priorities and goals in her committee right now for this task force. Ms. Macias?
Thank you, Dr. Zuniga. Our key goals and top priorities are to maintain effective and efficient operations by following best practices in 3 key areas: our facilities, nutrition services, and transportation services. Facilities, we are focusing on creating a safe environment for our students, teachers, and staff. We are busy setting up classrooms to maintain the 6-foot physical distancing, social distancing, to be able to provide the safe environment for our students, as well as implementing rigorous cleaning for our custodial staff. Nutrition services, as you all know, nutrition services has been busy throughout this entire time and will continue to work to provide free meals for our students following safe food handling practices. And lastly, transportation. Transportation is committed to meeting the transportation needs of our students while maintaining the 6-foot distancing. We are going to be reaching out to other outside vendors to be able to meet the transportation needs for our school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Macias. We would like to now move on to our next subcommittee, facilitator, family and community engagement. We have Mr. Cesar Castellanos, our assistant principal at South Almani High School, who is spearheading the subcommittee. Mr. Castellanos, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Zuniga. With the focus of community and family engagement, we want to make sure for our top priorities, communication with families and all stakeholders. So recently there was surveys distributed to parents, students, and staff members. We want to make sure that there's representation in our task force, which we have all stakeholders involved. We want to make sure we provide support for all families, services for families and resources. Methods of communication will include emails, letters, phone messages, social media platforms. Many of our schools are beginning to post how-to videos for summer school, and that's something we want to promote going forward. We want to share details for new district protocols and procedures, such as cleaning classrooms, sanitation, scheduling, etc. And we want to distribute information regarding new norms based on the COVID-19 crisis, such as social distancing, masks, washing hands regularly. And finally, we want to support all the community members in enhancing the remote learning efforts by training parents and students and staff members and work through school site with our community liaison.
Thank you, Mr. Castellanos. And I do want to stress the importance that our families and our students feel comfortable and feel informed that when they reopen the school, they have not only the guidance, but also the information starting this summer all the way through the start of the school year and ongoing. We know how important it is to ensure that your children are safe on campus as parents, and also students, you returning back to school, given the fact that you'll be going to be gone by the time we get back in August. If you count March, April, May, June, July, we're talking about almost a half a year since if we're going back to August, from March through August, and that's a significant amount of time. We understand that you will have different needs. You will have to be reacquainted with our school setting under certain conditions, and it's important that as much information is provided to you during this time. So I want to thank Mr. Castellanos and his subcommittee for preparing that information to you. Okay, let's move on to our next subcommittee. The next item here is social and emotional support. Another important factor in what we normally do at Monte Union High School District, provide a wraparound services. That means services outside the classroom for students, and not only students, but also our families. And this will also include the services for our staff, because they also need to be reacquainted coming back onto campus. It's been some time since we've also been away from the work environment. I'd like to also introduce Mr. Alejandro Leon, our Director of Support Services here, our Student Services. Mr. Leon?
Good evening to all. Buenas tardes a todos. El Monte Union High School District takes great pride in offering a robust support system to our community. We know that in order for our students to succeed, their families need to be well as well. So under our district's leadership, we've worked with community partners to expand our existing services to be able to adapt and support students at home, the communities at home, and support our staff as needed as well. So our main focus here is to ensure that we continue to provide quality resources in mental health and social development for students, that we have quality and support, support services for staff and community. In working with our neighboring community agencies, we've been able to make a quick shift to offer telehealth services or services via phone, or whichever way families prefer. We will continue to advocate on behalf of our students and our families to ensure that the services that we find are highly adaptive and flexible to the needs that present themselves. And lastly, I'll share that our district has also taken a considerable amount of time to ensure that not only is mental health taken care of and well-being is addressed, but that for those families who are facing a wide variety of struggles that this circumstance has brought forth, we are able to connect them with community partners that can support with unemployment, with food insecurity in a wide variety of areas. So again, under the support and leadership of our district, we take great pride in making these resources available and continuing to support and partner with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leon. And as we speak currently, we are continuing to provide services for our students and our families. If you haven't taken advantage of our grab and go meals, please do so. We and our KA partners continue to serve our families this summer. We have not stopped since March 16th when we had our students start the distance learning program, and that's been ongoing. I want to thank our nutrition services department under the leadership of Susie Sayer for coming to work every day with our essential workers, understanding that it's been a tough situation, but knowing the needs of our families and students continue to be our top priority. So we have 3 schools right now that provide meals. That includes Mountain View High School, that includes El Monte High School, and that also includes Arroyo High School. For more information, please check our website for schedules and times of pickup delivery. You also have the opportunity to go through your 8 KA partners also if you're closer to them too. Or give us a call. We'll be more than happy to help you get that information if you have not taken advantage of the grab and go meals of any eligible member of our community from the age of newborns all the way to 18 years old. Okay, so thank you again, Mr. Leon, for the social emotional support overview. I'm going to move on to our safety and health. Probably what everyone has on their mind right now when we are reopening of school. And I'm happy and proud to know that we have a committee that has taken this seriously, that has gone above and beyond to ensure that we are prepared for reopening of school amongst the challenges that we have. So with us, I believe we have Mr. Roy Monte. I know he was trying to get online. He was having a difficult time. Hopefully, Mr. Monte is there. I think I see him. So welcome, Mr. Monte. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zuniga. Good afternoon, everybody. The Safety and Health Subcommittee is comprised of classified employees as well as certificated employees, as well as union representatives, parents, students. So it's comprised of quite a few stakeholders. Our primary focus is on ensuring that we meet all the guidelines as recommended by the California Department of Education, the CDC, as well as the County Office of Education, and also the Office of Emergency Management. So our directives are pretty plain and simple. Make sure that each school site is compliant with all the local mandates, and we're making sure that we're implementing all the best practices, so we're including social distancing, making sure that everyone has masks, as well as additional PPE that's required in order to safely and effectively be in a learning environment. We're also making sure that equipment is being sanitized and verifying that if there is a process in place in the event that a student does show signs and symptoms consistent with COVID, or an employee shows signs and symptoms. So there's processes and plans in effect in order to make sure that we continue.
Thank you, Mr. Monte. And I know there are a lot of questions wrapped around the safety and health component, and also the guidelines and parameters that we will ensure once students and staff return that we would not only follow but adhere to. It's very critical for all of our community to understand that. And we've been challenged with, as you all know, even with your own families at home, once we knew about this pandemic, we were racing and purchasing, whether it was, for some of us, it was toilet paper, for others, it was the mask, and for others, it was just other PPE that you felt at the time was important. Well, once that happened, the inventory becomes, as far as our inventory becomes a concern. So we worked hard along with our county and state officials to come up with the system to work directly with the county as well as the state about inventory, ensuring that at least for the minimum for the start, for the first 2 months, the state has provided the reassurance that they would provide the supplies and support for reopening of school. For us, our responsibility that we consider ongoing inventory. And I also want to thank our Director of Purchasing, Ms. Claudia Sanchez. She and her team have worked hard to start purchasing equipment, whether it's additional masks that's needed, whether it's a soap and dispensers that are going to be needed in the restroom, liquid sanitizers for classrooms as well as offices. And there's just a lot of factors that we're just discussing and ongoing, but also ensuring that 6 months from now, 3 months from now, that we have a plan in place to continue operating with our safety parameters in place. So thank you again, Mr. Monte. Let's move on to our final subcommittee, I believe, is instruction. I put this one at the end because most of our, for the remainder of our conversation here, we're going to focus on students. We're going to focus on classroom. We're going to focus on returning and the different models that you may be hearing about, what's happening at our elementary schools versus what's happening maybe at the high schools. So I'd like to introduce Ms. Hillary Wolf, who's just going to give you a brief overview of what her committee what her committee does and what her responsibilities are at this time. Ms. Wolf, welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. The instructional subcommittee consists of teachers, administrators, parents, instructional coaches, librarians, the director of special ed, and our chief technology officer. We've been discussing how instruction needs to adapt to a variety of different possible scenarios and what that will mean for curriculum selection and the use of technology, plus the implications for assessment and grades, and taking into consideration the needs of our special populations and expanded learning opportunities. In addition to our own research and discussions, we've also been examining what other districts are doing around the San Gabriel Valley and throughout the county to make sure that we are on track and consistent.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. And I know there's a lot of information that is going to come your way regarding the models that we've been reviewing. We've been having conversation around, and I'd like to move on to the next slide so we can continue that conversation. So looking at these factors, and this is a great slide to remember, and as a reminder, we will feature this entire presentation on our website. Soon after the presentation, that'll be uploaded onto our district website for all of you to share and to review in case you missed a slide or two, okay? So we wanted to include this as a factor when deciding what the instructional model would be for our high school students. And I want to emphasize high school students because a lot of you have families that attend our K-8 schools, our K-8 schools meaning within our community. El Monte Union High School District focuses and is responsible for the oversight of all high schools in our area. That includes in South El Monte, that includes in Rosemead, that includes in El Monte, and all other designated cities that are within our boundaries, including some parts of Temple City, some parts of Arcadia, San Gabriel. We're spread out across this region here, which we call the greater El Monte area, as you know, for some of us. But I do want to emphasize that because some models may differ because of the challenges that high schools bring. When you have 6 or 7 classes, that means you're going to have 6 or 7 teachers that you'll be seeing throughout the year, correct? So please keep that in mind when we're talking about a high school model here this evening. So first and foremost, the safety and health of all of our community members. That means our students and our staff and our families who come to school for whatever reason. We would, again, follow the guidelines of the health orders that are in place. And this could be a moving target. You could have health orders today, and then a week from now, have different health orders. So we're closely monitoring that every day as we speak. The county provides an update about their health orders, including the impact of COVID, people that have tested positive, COVID-19, or even related deaths. So we also know that LA County has the highest rates of people testing positive COVID-19, but also the highest death totals too. So I know that LA County will move much slower than any other county in our area. That includes our next door neighbors, including Orange County, Riverside, and also San Bernardino. So whenever you watch television, whenever you see news or stories, please be mindful that the county plays a key role on decisions that are happening within our living areas, okay, within the county. amount of classroom space available to ensure social distancing. If you are familiar with your high school, you probably know when that high school was probably built, or when it became part of our school district. We have schools that are over 100 years old, and then we have schools that are over 25 years old. So the classroom environment is going to differ. The square footage will differ. So all of us are taking a close look at what square footage is currently exists at all of our school sites. We've had to provide an opportunity to measure not only the square footage, but also scenarios about desk, about the social distancing factor. So that's going to play a key role about making our decision to keep you safe on campus while we're returning back to school. Meeting instructional minutes per day requirements. If you played close attention to the governor and the legislator who recently approved the state budget for the upcoming fiscal year, it does say that we will still continue to have 180 days of instructional time. That means that we will begin as scheduled on August 18th, most likely, and if that stays within that time frame, we will end on the actual date of our calendar, which I believe it's going to be the 4th or the 5th, if I'm not mistaken, on our calendar. So those would be the 180 days that we would have to adhere to as far as instruction. The difference is it's going to be instructional minutes. We're required to meet instructional minutes throughout the year, regardless of the schedule you have. Well, this year is going to be a little different. We're still required a certain amount of minutes per day for instruction, but it's going to be a little flexible for us to allow any type of scenario, such as face-to-face learning, and then also the learning from home, because we understand that most likely when we come back in the fall, a lot of students will be part of that program where they're doing both coming to school and also continuing to learn at home too. Okay. The technology, the availability and accessibility for our students. We know that without our technology, without the access to devices such as MiFi devices or even internet at home, it becomes a challenge for all of our students that do not have that with them. I'm proud to say that all of our students will have a laptop device when they come to school in the fall or even this summer. That includes our incoming freshmen. We are very fortunate to have started this last fall when all of our students received a Chromebook for the remainder of their school years here at El Monte Union High School District. And I'm also proud to say that we are ready to provide the same service for next year's incoming students as well. And not only that, but we participated in a program called the Million MiFi program, allowing our students to get access to internet at home through a MiFi device. And the program that we are part of will continue this year. All of our students will have access to internet at home, either personally or through their family, or providing a MiFi device to them, issued to them not only for this year, but for the remaining school years that they are part of El Monte Union. So we're not only glad to have that, but we're excited to know that students would have the opportunity to continue learning under these conditions that we have, and technology will not be a factor. We will continue to monitor that as we go through the summer and into the fall. Family schedule and childcare. That is something that as families, you know that you also will be returning to work at some point, whether you're at work now, or that your employer has said starting this day you're going to come to work. So what does that mean for us as a high school district, and also for maybe your younger children that are going to our partner schools or our K-8 schools? That's going to be a challenge of childcare. That's going to be a challenge about what happened when you are away from work, and how do we manage the distance learning when kids are still at home and they also are coming to school. So we understand how critical that is, and we are continuing to work with our county partners to come up with different scenarios or solutions to support you with any type of the referrals or child care programs that are out there either in our schools or in our neighborhoods that can provide you with that support. We understand that's also going to be a key factor for your decision making at home. The number of families who may want 100% distance learning or online personal learning. That's another important factor. In looking at our survey, we understand that students, families, and even our staff members, some of them do not feel safe returning back to school whatsoever. They know that this pandemic will continue. They realize that regardless of the conditions or the orders that are out there, there's going to be a concern of coming back to school, and which at this time, there may be an option for continuing distance learning full time. Although the state has, under the new budget, has released an assembly bill called Assembly Bill 77, that has provided some guidelines about who will be eligible for distance learning for this upcoming school year. We are still researching what that actually entails, because from what we understand, there may be some specific points about who is eligible to return or if to opt out for for distance learning for when we come back in the fall. So stay tuned for more information on that. But nevertheless, we also are working as an option for now for distance learning at 100%. Personal protective equipment, the availability. I talked about inventory. I talked about our procedures to ensure that when our children and our staff members arrive, they're either equipped personally with protective gear or that we are providing that to them when they arrive on campus from the beginning all the way to the end. So that also will play a role in our model. Our staffing is key. We are looking on our staffing needs. This includes current health orders related to the age of an employee that they're recommending, if there's a specific age about any type of concern, or even underlying health condition that they currently have now. So staffing is going to be key also to what we can do and how we can support you as students and families when it comes time to reopening of schools and in the classrooms. I mentioned to you several times our kindergarten and 8th grade school districts, who also will be challenged with, we have 4 school districts that we work with. So when you have 4 different schedules, we understand that also might be a challenge with our schedule, aligning what your children are doing at the primary level. So when it comes time to the high school schedule, we understand that's going to be a concern to all of us. So we're hoping to work with our KA partners to see how we can best meet the needs of both our students that are attending primary school versus the students that are attending high school. Transportation, we know that our special education students or students with disabilities will need transportation as they are being provided transportation, or they have been provided transportation over the last school years. That will continue, but also the scheduling and the rerouting of either ways to pick up kids or how to pick up students, or whether it's going to be buses or some type of other vehicle to pick up students, how that's going to look like and when we will be ready for a different schedule or not, knowing that the limited amount of students at each bus will have an impact on our schedule as well too. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about that too. Outdoor and physical education environments. We are studying the outdoor and physical education environments to determine whether learning can occur outside, to determine whether there's opportunities for us to be creative and have some type of learning environments that will allow for students to engage in their education with their teachers outside. We're also focusing on what happens with physical education when it comes to distance learning and in what environments. So those are factors that we're also trying to resolve and also help us with planning. And last but not least, our nutrition schedules. As I mentioned to you that we've done summer programs, we will continue to run the same programs that we've done in years, including our opportunities for breakfast meals, opportunities for nutrition, as well as lunch programs. One of the challenges that we will face is the social distancing when it comes time to lunch period, when it comes time to our nutrition period, or even when kids arrive for nutrition. So those specific parameters will be guided by the health orders by the county at this time. Okay. If I could go on to the next slide, please. We want to focus a little bit on our surveys. The survey will be the deadline for the surveys for both of our families, our students, and our staff is scheduled to end tomorrow as far as an opportunity to complete the survey. So if you have not done so, please take a look at the survey. It does not take a long time to get the survey completed. We need as much input from all of our stakeholders, from all of our students, families, and staff members about your feelings about reopening of the school. So if you have not done so, please complete that. Although these surveys have not been completed and there's still time to get more data, we want to share with you some of the data that I took a look at yesterday. And I waited as much as possible to put this slide out because it provided us, it's going to provide us an opportunity or a glimpse about what are the feelings out there for students, for example. This slide shows how comfortable students are to returning to school in person this fall. And we emphasize every day, if they were to come every day, and if there are health and safety measures like social distancing. So if kids can come every day with health and social distancing measures in place, how comfortable would that be for them? The scale was from 1 all the way down to 5. 1 being I'm very uncomfortable returning back to school, and 5 being I'm very comfortable and I'm ready to go. So if you take a look at this percentage, you'll see that not everyone has the same feelings here. We see this across the board, that there's going to be different emotions, different feelings because of what we face either personally, whether we have known someone or we are looking at data through the health department or what's on the news at this time. And there's other factors too, including what we're dealing with in society right now. Also, maybe something in our family that's going on. But when you look at this, you'll see that the majority of folks are right in the middle at 28%, with 408 replied that there's someone in the middle returning back to school. And as we go to my, looking at my screen, if I'm looking to my right, it looks like the next percentages are even about a little bit higher, a little bit lower than that, but just right around there, about 24% with feeling a little bit more comfortable, and then 5 at 21.8% that they're very comfortable returning back to school. And how I measure that, if you look at the number 3, 4, and 5, and you combine that, the majority of students want to come back to school. They miss their friends. They miss just being part of the school environment. They know that there's a lot of concerns still personally on their end, but they also know that as a youth, as a high school student, some of the four years, the greatest years in life are measured through their experiences in high school. And I know that as a high school student myself, I look forward to coming to school. So especially in high school and being part of that, just a society and friendship and connection with my peers and my teachers and everyone, being part of the school community. So I can understand that, relate to that. And then also, again, there's going to be concern about 26% of our students are still feel very uncomfortable or don't feel comfortable coming to school, regardless of the health and safety measures put in place, and also whether it's maybe every day or some days during the week. Okay, we felt that was important for you guys to look at right now. And if you count those numbers, we still need more input from students. As you know, that we're about 8,000 students enrolled in our school district, and we're getting close to about 2,000 surveys. I think last time we checked, we were close to 1,800 at the time. So please get out there and complete that survey. We'll send some reminders again by tomorrow. Okay. I want to focus now on another slide here. It's another survey that our staff took and is taking now. This is a question. So we asked our staff, my comfort level in physically returning to my work site is, again, this is similar to the graph you saw, very uncomfortable, number 1, all the way down to very uncomfortable, number 5. And look at the similarities compared to the first slide, is that a lot of response comes from the middle, about 109 responses with, kind of feel comfortable somewhat, but, I'm not too sure. So that's how we measured that. And looking at number 1 and 5, it really is aligned the same, as far as some of them being very comfortable and some of them being very uncomfortable returning to school. So that is going to be something that we're going to consider looking at again tomorrow once it's completed, and hopefully we have more input from our staff to help us decide a plan our final reopening of schools district plan. Okay, so if we get down to the next slide, please. And I'd like to share with you what our families or parents thought when it came to this survey results for preliminary ones that are measured as of yesterday. Question was, are you considering keeping your child home for the 2021 school year and continuing with distance learning? The red says no, and then the blue says yes. The orange is unsure. Lots of our families are still considering their options right now. It's still early. We know that it's the end of June. We have the whole month of July to go through. Lots can change between now and the end of July. We know that we start school in the middle of August, or that's what we're scheduled for. So I could understand the uncertainty of the 34.3% of our respondents had decided that one. But there's still some thought in this, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we will provide the county or even the state of our pandemic will guide us to make a decision for our students, your children, and also our staff as well. Okay, so go to the next slide, please. We wanted to share with you some of the information that was shared earlier about the classrooms and how we would adhere to the social distancing recommendation of 6 feet. And if you look at the top panoramic picture here, this is a rural high school, I believe, and it's a classroom setting that already has the 6 feet apart. If you do a quick count of the desks, you kind of get a good glimpse about for these classroom settings at a rural high school, how many kids approximately we would be able to serve at one time if we had to adhere to this social distancing order that is currently in existence now. On the bottom is another classroom. This is El Monte High School, and El Monte High School is probably a different square footage as far as classroom, but we also decided to look at how we can create barriers or borders between desks. And it doesn't hurt to look at some of these desks as borders, just like you see at restaurants or at stores. When you walk in, there's a table in front of you. Well, this is kind of the same concept to provide restrictions or limitations of movement around the classroom. Though you're going to have less kids, you're still going to have to practice that social distancing in that classroom. And our kids and also our teacher are going to have to help each other when it comes to that, about keeping that social distancing in order. So we felt we explored an idea of having that. But also in some of these pictures, you'll see that there's going to be 2 desks provided. If we had to do a AM session and a PM session for one day, where a set of kids come in the morning and another set come in the afternoons, you understand that it takes a long time to check every classroom, to sanitize classrooms in between this break period, to ensure that the kids that are coming in know that there's a sanitized classroom and it's a clean classroom, and that the desk that's being utilized was not utilized during the day by another student. That also would include obviously the chair too. So that is something that we're also exploring about the formatting or reorganizing of classrooms too. One recommendation that was, go ahead, you can move that to the slide. One recommendation was to try to move as much furniture out of the classroom to provide more room for desks. There's bookshelves, there are sometimes workstations. So we're doing our best to also do that and limit the amount of furniture. And we're continuing to do that as measured by some of the pictures here. The top one, it looks like that classroom, with the exception of some of the counters that are already anchored in, you can't remove them. Almost everything's out. And then you also have another classroom setting. I believe these classrooms come from South El Monte High School. We still have some items in the back that we have to consider whether those are essential needs for our teacher or something that we can do without to provide more spacing in there too. It looks like a large classroom, so that also is helpful too. Okay, so we wanted to show you a glimpse about what we're working on in the classrooms now. All right, if I could go on to the next slide, please. Now moving into the remainder of our focus for this presentation is instructional models. I want to provide you just with a glimpse of what these instructional models we're exploring and look like, because these three are the current popular options or popular items that are out there for all schools, regardless of kindergarten or 12th grade. There's going to be opportunities to look at this. One of the ones that you're familiar with is face-to-face. That is something that we have traditionally done, our face-to-face learning, having our kids interact, engage with our teachers in a classroom setting at a specific time, either in small groups that the teacher is allowed to do part of the schedule, or even sometimes one-to-one where the teacher is engaged with that student. These measures and these conditions would also need to be under the social distancing and other health orders at this time. So I know that all of us wish for normalcy, back to return to school, but when you're talking about social distancing and when you're talking about these orders, it's going to limit the amount of kids in a classroom, which would definitely impact our decision in the instructional models. So we like to face-to-face, but unfortunately, we can't continue doing the traditional schedule we've had with having on a class size average with 35, 36 kids at a high school setting. Some even greater, some even less, depending on the classroom program and the site of the classroom sometimes. The middle one is something that a lot of us are learning about and we're carefully looking at, because this one's going to be a key factor in the fall, at least in the fall for now. We'll see what happens in the spring. Some of you know it as the hybrid model, and a lot of us are using the term blended learning. For our Almani Union, we're calling it blended learning at this time, because I think it's simple to understand that there's a blend, that it comes together between coming onto campus, meeting with teachers as far as students, and then also continuing independent learning, or we don't want to call it independent, we want to call it continuing e-learning, or a combined setting of classroom instruction versus going home and doing their distance learning program with the guidance and also direction of our teachers. You would have assignments, you would have some homework, you would have work to do while your teacher is maybe attending to other students at a different time. So that is one popular option, specifically at high schools, because we're very limited when it comes to having 6 or 7 teachers focusing on, or one student focusing on having to focus on 7 classrooms. That equates to 7 or 6 teachers as well. And then finally, at the bottom, the last one is distance learning. That is something that we learned on March 16th about learning from home, about adapting, about utilizing technology to support distance learning virtually, whether it's the popular Zoom session or even our Google Hangout, and also pre-recorded instructional lessons that we are doing now either through summer school, but we're taking a run at it right now at summer school, and we're trying to perfect the distance learning model for those families or students that may need that model in the fall. Okay, so those are the 3 models I want you to keep mindful of. Now, what we're going to learn and more and more about now is the actual middle one, the blended learning, because we feel that based on the input provided, a lot of our families and students wish to return to school under the current health orders, but also knowing that we have restrictions when they come onto campus too. So I'd like to now look at this graph here about what family would prefer for the child to consider when it comes to this blended model. The question is, if students can physically return to school in August with health and safety measures in place, which option do you prefer, parents? And we also included a couple of different ideas, right? So let's look at the smallest one. 7.7% of our parents were still unsure about the actual option that they would prefer. Let's look at distance learning. We're looking at, just quickly in the yellow one, about 18% prefer distance learning only at the time. And then when it comes to the red one, actually I'm taking it to the blue one now, 34.2%. They'd like to be here every day. They'd like to go back to normalcy and have our students attend school every day. Students attend every class every day from 7:45 a.m. to 2:50 p.m. I think we all do. We really feel that our kids and our teachers have the best opportunities to not only make connections, but thrive in teaching and learning under the traditional model. We do understand that, but we also wanted to see what parents felt if we were, all of a sudden drastic, keep our hopes high that something happens and there's a cure and we're able to return back. That is the model we're referring to, where we would be able to return back under no conditions for our social orders anymore. We would fully implement our program. The red one is about 40%, 39.8%. That is the blended model that most of our families prefer at this point, with students attend school sometime, but also work through distance learning, as we have practice in the spring, and for some of our students, they're doing that now for distance learning. Okay, so different results as far as the options, but we also want to just make sure that we understood where parents and families currently stand. The other question is, which blended schedule option would you prefer? So we had about yesterday 1,654 responses, and there is a variety here. So the blended learning option that's most popular would be the red one, because the purple one does not apply. They would still prefer that we would go back to the traditional model of having school every day. But the red one is the students physically attend school 2 full days a week and continue working through distance learning. Close second would be students physically attend every day, 5 classes for 2 hours and 20 minutes each day. That's also been a popular one that we initially looked at as far as that model. I'm going to focus on the red one just for today, knowing that the current orders are in place and knowing that we would be challenged to have every kid attend every period and ensure that there is safety conditions on campus, including classrooms, sanitizing, and cleaning in between the classes, and allowed for a limited access to the campus when it comes time to having lunch, when it comes time to arriving on campus. Even being outside, social distancing parameters have to be in place. So the recommendations are we have to limit the amount of individuals outside the classroom at one time. And that's going to be one of the greatest challenges for us returning. So we want to focus today on the most popular option as far as some of the two days a week, and we have a few different models that we're exploring. And I do want to go on record that none of this has been decided on. We'll continue to work with our committee, obviously, but also seek input and work with our partners, our association partners, our teachers, specifically more for the classroom models related to the learning plan for our students, okay? But just keep that in mind when we're discussing this. So I'm going to hand it over now to Ms. Hillary Wolf, and she's going to give you guys an overview of the models that her subcommittee has been exploring and has been having conversations about. Ms. Wolf?
Thank you, Dr. Zuniga. So as Dr. Zuniga said, the Instructional Subcommittee has been evaluating many, many scenarios. And again, keeping in mind that high school is different from elementary and even middle school because of the students having so many different teachers and schedules. And as I mentioned, we did research and investigate what other districts are doing as well. So the Instruction Subcommittee has been talking mostly about the blended learning option, which means that students come to school part of the week for live instruction, and when they're not on campus, they're completing online activities from home on their off days. There are a number of ways this could work, and currently our committee is looking at the possibility of breaking the 18-week semester into 3 6-week quarters. So students would come to school for 2 days a week for intensive work in 2 classes at a time. Another option is they could take 3 classes at a time for 9-week sessions. These scenarios would still allow for a grab-and-go lunch and also provide time for online personalized learning if the students so desire. So before we look at these options more closely, please remember, as Dr. Zuniga said, this is still a work in progress. Things may change as conditions change or as health and safety needs are considered, and nothing is finalized as of yet. So this is how it could look if we went with an AB cohort that had students attend 2 classes each day on alternating days. We are imagining that each period would be 2 hours with a long break between to allow time to clean the rooms, have lunch, and give teachers time for office hours or collaboration and lesson planning. After 6 weeks, the quarter would end and students would get 2 new classes for the next 6 weeks. Okay, next slide. Another option is the same idea of 2 classes for 6 weeks at a time, but the cohorts would be arranged as either morning or afternoon groups. So this means students would come for 4 half days each week. The break in between the classes would allow the A group to leave before the B group arrives. And the next slide. And finally, this option has an AB cohort, but instead of going to 2 classes each day, the students would attend 3 classes each day, and the session would last 9 weeks. Classes would be shorter, maybe 60 minutes each, and the school day would end earlier, with students taking their lunch to go and having the afternoon for teacher office hours. You'll notice in all of these options that one day, Monday, has been set aside to allow for student intervention, teacher collaboration, and teacher training on new technologies and instructional strategies. This honors the individual needs of both students and teachers through this transition, which was something we felt was very important. Next slide. So as the subcommittee was hammering out these different options, we recognized that some version of blended learning is the most likely scenario. And while there will never be a perfect solution, we are trying to weigh the advantages and disadvantages of each option to come up with the best solution for our students and staff in terms of their safety and well-being. So some of the advantages of these models for students include only having to focus on 2 or 3 classes per quarter, which is much less overwhelming for them. And we got feedback from our students that they were overwhelmed by the amount of work they had to do in the spring and in the summer as well. Having fewer students on campus and more time for cleaning. Students would get at least 2 interactions with teachers every week. Students would have adequate time between in-person meetings to complete their home assignments. And there's dedicated time to provide students with any interventions and supports that they need. Next slide. For teachers, the advantages of this schedule would include having time to collaborate, to build lessons, and get training on new digital curriculum or platforms, having time to give more individualized attention and feedback to students, still having time to offer extended learning options, and finally, this schedule can easily transform into an all-distance learning model if we're asked to shelter in place again. Next slide. So obviously, no system is perfect, and here are some of the disadvantages we are weighing when considering one of these models. So first, the content would need to be significantly restructured from 18 weeks to accommodate 6 or 9 weeks. This is still less time on campus and with teachers than a traditional schedule allowed. This does require strict adherence to social distancing protocols for students and staff. This could mean real challenges for buses and transportation for our students to pick up and drop off possibly 2 times per day. And instruction-wise, a 2-hour block means providing a variety of different activities, which is going to take more time to plan. And also there are some subjects like world languages, art, and so on that rely on daily instruction. So again, I want to emphasize that nothing has been decided. An AB cohort seems to offer the most flexibility, and we're trying to weigh all the pros and cons.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Just to wrap up before we get to athletics, we can go back to the challenges on that slide there. It's important to know that there's no perfect system in place for high school setting under these conditions. And we most likely will be challenged with providing those ongoing services that are really critical, such as the AP program that, prepare for a kid in the spring to take that exam. How are you going to provide that continuing learning throughout the months and into the spring, winter and spring? We also know that AP had to adapt to high schools because of social distancing and because of school closures and because of learning, either it's online or the program that we're doing as far as through distance learning. So we're paying a close attention to our AP colleagues from the College Board about what they're willing to explore this year for opportunities for our students under these conditions. We don't want our kids to be at a disadvantage when it comes to preparing for the AP class. We know that. We also know that all of our surrounding high schools in the San Gabriel Valley and even LA County are looking at these type of models, given the high school classroom periods are challenging to have a class every day. We also looked at exploring a possibility of a further blending of schedules. For example, if we're looking at the 2-day option, what if we had a kid that wanted to take an additional class? Can it be done through an online class? And that's something that we would consider and look at as an option for some of these courses, maybe such as AP or some of these other opportunities. So we're going to continue talking to our members of our task force, our community, our educators, our AP, as far as the challenge there. But also, I could say the same thing for other subject matters such as mathematics. It's key that, and it's important that when you're taking a math course, that it's ongoing, right? Step 1, you learn it. Step 2, the next day. So it's ongoing. And we understand the challenges with even a 9-week schedule. If you take the math class 9 weeks for the first week and then you don't have no math after, coming back in the spring, if we were able to go back to normalcy, that would be wow, I missed the 9 week, I forget. So there's a lot of challenges, and I know it's not a perfect system, and I'm hopeful that not only hopeful, but I do know that our committee has the expertise and the knowledge and the research that's required to come up with one of the best, at least, options for our students this fall for now. And I call it a temporary solution under these conditions because we don't expect to have this ongoing year in and year out. We hope not. We also know that this is not the best opportunity for our students in a learning environment. Our traditional schedules have always been the best opportunity when the kids are at school learning alongside their teachers and also participating in other types of events, co-curricular programs, etc. So just wanted to close up with that, and we look forward to, again, providing more updates to all of you as we get into July. We have provided some time frames over the next couple of weeks to allow for us, and also knowing that August 18th is quickly approaching. I think my communication was last time it was 60 days. We're probably around about 50 days now before we open up the school year, or even maybe lower than that. Okay, so if we can now get back to, I want to wrap it up with athletics, because that's a co-curricular is a key component. And I just don't want to say athletics because I also know that our band program also provides summer camps when it comes to preparing for the school year, as well as other opportunities for clubs that either come to the summer, participate, or some type of a program on campus. So in looking at athletics, 2 things. We got to look at what's happening both in CIF, because that's also a driver in the state. And we also looked at what the County Department of Public Health is currently telling us with regards to athletic programs. The county is going to release their guidelines soon, and we will take another look at that. But the county did say that under this current phase, students are allowed to begin conditioning, and students are allowed to practice independently. And I want to use that word independently because when we're talking about our sports, a lot of them are team sports. And what we know about a team practice means that there's a lot of interaction, there's a lot of contact. That currently is not allowed. So what is allowed is basically working out on your own, working in very small groups, overseen by a supervisor, meaning your coach, and also adhering to current orders from the County Department of Public Health. Then it means, mask, wearing a mask, the disinfecting of equipment, materials, etc. And that also means you cannot practice as a unit together. You cannot share by tossing footballs together, sharing bats, or sharing any type of equipment between students and students. So we need to be very, very careful about when we open up the doors for athletics and how that's going to look like. CIF has not made a decision about the sports for the season in the fall. They are scheduled to make a decision by July 20th. They'll make a final decision. So we're still a little bit away from even CIF saying there'll be competition in the fall, or whether they're going to say we're not going to start the competition in the fall. We're going to wait another month or so. That yet to be determined. And also the high school district is finalizing its guidelines for all of our coaches and our sports for the fall, but also for any other program that incorporates some type of training or some type of physical program outside and on campus. And those guidelines, we're hopeful that we will be done and completed by this Wednesday, and then we'll be releasing to all our principals for final review, and then also allow for our coaches and our students to be aware of the guidelines as well. Okay, so I would recommend that you look at, for further information, the CIF guidelines. One important thing I forgot to mention, CIF will provide guidelines, but also at the end of the day, they're going to say it's up to you as a local education agency to determine what you will need to do, followed by the actual recommendations of state and local authorities. That was actually the first bullet point there. So I want to remember that and keep that in mind when we're talking about our decisions. Would heavily rely on the whole health orders from the county. Okay, so I think that was an important slide because a lot of our students involved in these programs are they're anticipating returning, and they can't wait to get out there and compete and be part of a program. All right, and next slide, please. So now is an opportunity for the questions and answers. And if you've listened to this presentation from the start, you were provided maybe some of the answers to your questions you may have had in your mind, or just want to get ready to do that. You can still do that at this point. We're receiving questions, and we're gonna go ahead and get those questions answered to you. So please, if you have a question, feel free to share that at this time. We're going to do our best to answer that question. And sometimes we don't have every answer to a question, but we will certainly will respond if we don't have that answer to your question at this time. Okay, so I want to make sure that you also know that too. Mrs. Torres, our principal at Monte High School and future assistant superintendent, she's going to help me with some of the questions that we currently already gathered. And we'll do that as we finish out the next steps, just to make sure that you have time to get some more questions on there. So what do we do now? Moving on, we go back to that next steps now. Where are we at now? This is we got one more day of June, and then we open up July on Wednesday, and then that'll carry us for the entire month of planning for July. So let's make our final recommendations on instructional model for fall in July. That needs to be determined as early as July, or the sooner the better, so we can prepare as a school, as an actual district, our staffing needs, our classroom schedules, our needs for PPE, how many kids will actually be on campus, etc. So we want to make that commitment to you in the month of July, and we're hoping that by mid-July we will have that finalized for you, and working with our association partners, with our teachers, and also our classified staff. The third bullet, monitor guidelines from the state and county regarding students return to school and appropriate options at all that at this time, or at that time of a decision. For example, you've heard the recent news that Disneyland was scheduled to open up, right? Everyone's a big fan of Disneyland. So even I was excited about, hey, get a chance to go back to Disneyland. I haven't been there for quite some time. Yet Disneyland said, we're not going to open up after all in July. We're going to take our time with this. And that will further push back the start time for the happiest place on earth. So just using that example about what's happening with some of these state and county guidelines. The governor this weekend said some, retracted some of the things that he released about some opening of facilities as well. That changes, and that will change throughout the next couple of months. So we got to pay attention to what the state and also our county provide for us. Complete district reopening of school plan by mid-July. When I say the district plan, I'm talking about the 5 components of our plan. We commit to you that that plan will be released to the public by the middle of July. Obviously, there's going to be different versions that I mentioned to you. And if we finalize the actual distance learning plan for the model that we talked about, that would also be included or updated in another version, okay? So we want to make sure that you also understand what our timeline and process is. Going back to the next bullet point here, the complete, the student fall registration We're going to follow the same calendar for fall registration. We're going to start on August 3rd to the 12th. We're working on a virtual format for our students to complete as much as possible through an online system and to get all your documents as parents completed online. If you do need, obviously, a hard copy, that's going to be available to you too. So don't panic or don't worry about whether it's going to be a full online or not. This is something that's new to us too. But we'd like to minimize the amount of traffic even during the time of registration on campus as we get ready for the fall opening. And then the last bullet, please visit our website for ongoing updates on reopening of schools. We do our best to update that website every week with new information, new updates to you. There is a special, when you log into our website, at the top there are tabs. One of them is going to say reopening of schools, and that's going to lead you to even this presentation and more information, including surveys, including our task force updates too. Okay, so I invite you to visit our website frequently. I'm sure your principals will share information as well throughout the summer as we get into the reopening of school. All right, so this provided at least some time for you if you had any questions to get those to us at this time. And I'm gonna now have Mrs. Torres help us out with some of the moderating as far as the announcement or be the moderator for our Q&A. Mrs. Torres, I think your mic is not on, or if you want to turn that on.
There we go. Good afternoon. Question number 1 comes from a staff member. Will we have teacher layoffs, and what is that timeline?
Thank you for asking that question. For all of you who know that I mentioned the budget, I mentioned the constraints that we will face this coming year and the following years, that one of the unfortunate times during these conditions is possible layoffs for both teachers, all of us, for classified employees, anyone that's part of a educational setting, as 80 to 85% of our budget relies on supporting staff and providing staff to our students. The actual governor and the legislator agreed that there would be no scheduled layoffs for teachers for the fall. There is an education code for fall layoffs from the start timeline for the summer up to August 15th or by August 15th. That no longer is part of this school year, as well as the classified employees who are considered essential classified employees. If you recall that when we closed campuses, we had employees continue to work, including our food service folks. Our maintenance and custodial will be critical, and also our transportation needs for our students. So those three, from the top of my head, are identified classifications that would be excluded from any type of classified layoff if we had to do them this fall. So our district at this point is evaluating our budget. We're carefully looking at the opening of school as we get in there with the mindset that we're going to do everything possible to avoid any type of layoffs in the future. But we're talking about now the opening of school and where we're at now, knowing that if there's potential layoffs down the road, whether it's in the coming school next school year or the coming spring. And I'm sure that we could provide more updates as we get more information from either the budget update, but also our state and county officials too. Now I want to keep in mind too that it was a wait and see adoption, knowing that taxes and deadline for taxes for folks to submit their taxes will be July 15th, knowing that there'll be an update on the budget come August, and also relying heavily on our federal government to support our states or support states, including education programs. Definitely will be important to know where the federal government stands when it comes to providing more financial support for states as we get reopening of school. Okay, hopefully I answered that question. Please feel free to contact me personally if you have any other questions related to teacher layoffs and timelines. Mr. Soares?
Next question, how will students take advanced placement courses in a hybrid model?
That's a great question. As I think we made reference to that AP and significance of the challenges that bring it. Ms. Wolf, do you want to elaborate on a little bit more about that and maybe potential options we're looking at, or how we can address the support of AP students?
Yeah, so again, this is, we are aware that classes like AP, like CTE, like music and world language, they rely on day-to-day instruction. The only thing that we can say is it's an unprecedented time, and things are going to have to look different. As we said, the districts all around San Gabriel Valley are also considering hybrid models that are 2-day AB cohorts. So we're not alone in trying to establish a course sequence that is compacted or reduced. Again, that's why we really felt like it was a necessity to have that full day of collaboration and PD available for teachers so that they had time to work on their curriculum. I know this year the AP test was changed to accommodate for the stay-at-home orders. So, you know, I don't know what the AP's plans are for the tests next year, but I would imagine if so many districts are having to rethink how their instruction is given, I would imagine the AP is going to have to respond to that. So that would just be an ongoing point of discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. So we will pay attention to what the College Board will provide support when it comes to AP students, knowing that a lot of these schedules will be very familiar to high school settings this fall. All right. But that's a great question and is very significant in providing that support for our ongoing AP student learning. Next question, Ms. Torres.
How will high-risk staff and students participate in a hybrid model?
High-risk staff, so I believe that may make reference to staff with existing health conditions, and I hope I'm reading this right, and how that relates to student how they would participate with the hybrid model, if I'm not mistaken. So how will high-risk staff and student participate in hybrid model?
Yes.
Okay. Currently now, the Department of Public Health in Los Angeles County highly recommend that those who have existing health conditions and as specified or not specific to their which health condition, but as diagnosed by their physician and their doctor, would obviously work with that teacher or educator, but not only their teachers, but also other classified members as well. And the other option that we would need to address is if the teacher cannot come to work and participate in the hybrid model, will there be an opportunity to continue educating students through other models and programs, such as our OPL program, that's an online program, personal learning for students that have just opted to do online learning, even currently exists right now. Also for students and families that opted for the distance learning model. So we would have to come up with a scenario and staffing needs about the amount of students that are online, and have our teachers who we feel should be focusing on the priority of their health condition and maybe not coming to work at this time, but also finding ways to support students through other type of models. So unfortunately, the hybrid model, if they're having to see kids face to face, would be a challenge for us under the current health orders right now.
Dr. Zuniga, same with students participating that are at high risk, correct?
That's correct. For students that are at high risk and their families wish for them not to be part of the returning of school when it comes to any type of blended learning or on-campus learning, they would also be at home with distance learning as well. Okay.
Thank you. Next question comes from a student. Will masks or face coverings be a requirement? And there was a second part of it from another student. What are the consequences for not wearing the facial coverings?
Great question. And as you know, that a lot of us are in situations where we're in the public setting, and we see some folks with masks, some folks that don't mask. When it comes to entering a classroom or even a campus, at this time that the state is telling us that masks must be worn by students and staff members who are coming to school, coming onto campus. Although there will be some exceptions for our students that have medical conditions, for example, that are not able to wear masks for specific reasons under their health conditions or any type of condition that prevents them from wearing their mask. That is also outlined in the current governor's assembly bill or the Assembly Bill 77 that provide these guidelines. And we will provide those scenarios and provide additional support for any of our teachers or classified staff members who may be working with these students under these health conditions. They're going to require more as far as the PPE resources available to them during the day if they're having to work with students that are facing these conditions at this time. Okay, so overall, the overwhelming percentage of anyone who comes on campus would have to wear a mask on campus. So what are the consequences of students that do not qualify under the current guidelines provided by the state? Most likely we would have to work with the families at this time to, number one, thoroughly explain the reason and purpose of not wearing a mask so we can have a better understanding, and also provide option for that student and family if they refuse not to wear the mask. Refusal and being unable to wear the mask are two different things. So we need to better identify maybe the reasoning behind the student not wearing the mask.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, another question from the student. Have we had discussions, and this one was kind of answered already, have we had discussions and or guidelines for sports for the upcoming school year?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Torres, and I'm going to refer back to the conversation we had regarding athletics. In a nutshell, students are able to now begin conditioning and also individual workouts, or at most small group workouts under the current health order of social distancing. We commit to provide those guidelines as soon as possible and as early as Wednesday, and ensure that you're also, as a student, aware once your coach or your school administrator has these guidelines provided to you. We'll share those and we'll also post them on our website.
Okay, next question comes from a paraeducator. Will paraeducators be accounted for when completing classroom capacity charts?
The classroom capacity depends on the amount of desks in social distancing, for social distancing. So we're trying to keep our students obviously separated, but also our staff, including our teachers. So paraeducators would have to be part of that social distancing order in the classroom as well, meaning that whether they're in a certain area at a time or they're assisting students, we would obviously put something in front of them as a barrier if they would have to have a student come up and work with them specifically, one-to-one. So that will definitely have to be taken consideration. They would not be allowed to get close to the child, talk to them, work with them as we've seen before. The capacity would vary, so I'm not sure if there's an initial number, but it would refer to the actual social distance order for our current health order advised by the LA County Department of Health.
Thank you. Next question comes from a student. Will we still have sports, clubs, and dances?
I wish I could answer your question with a affirmative yes. We will have sports, clubs, and dances. Unfortunately, I can't answer you that question. If we were to reopen schools tomorrow, we would not have sports competitions as we've seen them. We would not have dances as we've seen them in the past. Clubs would be a possibility. We can do a club virtually. I mean, there's various ways to do ongoing clubs through the advisor as well as the students, and using creativity to do any type of clubs and organizations. But I think this question maybe is, are we returning back to normalcy? Is there potential for that? And at this point, unfortunately, we do not see that for the fall. Although we will be creative as possible when it comes to some of these extracurricular activities that we would have on campus, even when students are on campus, if there's any opportunity to do so. Okay, that's our commitment to you, because we know that the reason why you come to school. And those three reasons are big reasons why you're coming to campus. Great question, though. And I'm sorry if I was not able to give you the answer you wanted at this time.
Thank you. And the next question comes from a staff member. How will music programs operate? Will we be able to participate in festivals, competitions, and performances?
So the music programs, there is specific guidelines for, I'm gonna use two examples. It could refer to either our band, instrumental, or our choir. Each of the actual programs has specific guidelines that I've seen from the draft that I reviewed from the county. So even in the classroom, there would be social distancing. I believe one of them even would have to go through virtual means at this time, from the last time I checked. And I can't confirm that, but I also know that there would definitely be adherent to social distancing, meaning that there would be limited amounts of competitions, limited amounts to face-to-face or in-person performances. I see this as a partnership with the organizations that are in festivals that do these annual events. But keep in mind also that we as a district adhere to the county guidelines. And we will continue to do that. What's going to be challenging is that when there is a program or an event outside the county or outside the state of California, those health orders may change, but also understanding that those students are coming back to our schools, are coming back to the state and back to the county, knowing that the changing conditions may have differed or definitely have differed from county to county. So I definitely would like to explore more about the conversations around it. It's a great question. My initial response would be is to refer to the county's public health orders when it comes to both band and also choir or vocal music at this time.
And the last question that we were able to capture prior to the start of the Q&A is from a staff member from an Adult Transition Center. And how will the classrooms be social distanced? And if I can elaborate a little bit more, it was regarding the support staff that's in the Adult Transition Center classrooms for the students themselves.
It's a great question too. If you're not familiar with one of our programs, I believe this is focusing on Adult Transition Center program, correct, Mrs. Torres?
Yes, correct.
So our Adult Transition Center has classrooms that are part of a environment that provides services to moderate to severe students that may have some health conditions, that are physically challenged or maybe challenged about their learning. These are students that have graduated from or completed high school programs and now are continuing on services between the ages of, I believe, 18 to 22, if I'm not mistaken, for 4 more years after high school. And the classrooms require ongoing support by various staff members. Most likely, we would have to look at a schedule that is suitable for the adult transition students, where we would most likely have to stagger these students, just like we did with the high school model, so that the number of students that are currently now in place would be limited to half of the number. So we're adhering to the social distance orders, as one of the questions was paraeducators, and the amount of interaction and contact with students. But we also know that some of these students need provided services, such as attention, whether it's meeting their needs when it comes to health needs, that you're having to look out for them, care for them, move them to certain areas. So we will work with our special education department and our county, who provides also oversight of special education services, including our SELPA. We would look at closely about what are the best practices when it comes to that environment. But I also want to go on record that every student deserves to be part of our education system, regardless of they're disabled or not. Every student must have a program that is suited for them under the conditions, with being mindful that also the safety of both our students and our staff members have to take a part of that decision making too. So that definitely will be a challenge, and we're looking forward to meeting the needs of our students and are also caring for our staff who attend to these kids every day.
Dr. Zuniga, if I may add one more component.
Yes, please.
I would also like to just reassure the community and staff that our district has taken the appropriate steps to secure a wide variety of personal protective equipment known as PPE. And depending on the duties and responsibilities of any one individual and the required contact, different types of PPE can be administered to ensure the health and safety of all.
Thank you, Mr. Leon. Mrs. Torres, are there any questions, other questions?
There were a few more questions that were added as we started. If we can reply to those via email or on the district website.
Okay.
A lot of them are very similar to the first ones asked.
We will write every question. We will put every question on the website with the response, even if they're the same, similar, or we would combine those questions. I want to make sure that all the questions will be answered within the next 48 hours. Okay. All right. Believe if we may return back to the presentation. I think that was the last one. Is that correct? As far as just the Q&A slide. Okay. So this concludes our forum. I want to thank you for your commitment again, spending some time with us this evening. We know your time is valuable, but we also know that this is just the beginning as we get into the conversation or ongoing conversation about reopening of school. I commit to you as a superintendent that I will do my best to keep you informed, to provide any resources that are available through our local community, through our county, and through our state to support you as students, as parents, and also as staff members. We know that the health and safety of all of you is of the utmost importance. And if we weren't facing these conditions, we wouldn't be talking about these plans at this time. So please keep that in mind, that we'll continue to work, do our best to serve you as a district. And just want to let you know that we'll get through these challenging times. In the fall comes, we're going to face and overcome more challenges. But I want you to hang in there. I want you to be patient with us. And I want you to do the best you can do for your family to keeping them safe, to ensure that you are also adhering to some of the orders out there publicly, that when you go out there on, onto the public, whether it's stores or in large crowds, to please keep that in mind, that also that we are a large community also. And El Monte, the El Monte community has one of the highest rates of COVID who have tested positive at this time, and even the death rates in this probably the top 3 in the county. So please keep that in mind, that we need to take care of ourselves and also take care of your families too, both physically, socially, and mentally. And if you need anything, please do not hesitate to contact me, myself personally. You have my email address. You also have the phone number to the district office. I'm here every day, as well as my colleagues here. So thank you for spending some time with us. We look forward to providing you more updates in the future, whether it's virtually or to communication, email, and e-blast and social media. Have a good evening, and thank you again. Enjoy. Bye-bye.